you could sit here and analyze, oh, which flight school am I going to go to, and what's should I relocate, and this and that, and what kind of planes do they have, and should I do an accelerated program, or should I do a short one, or all, and you could sit there and just analyze this stuff and never take action,
Right.
and you're never going to be a pilot. You're better off just starting somewhere and seeing what happens.
You can do anything you want. Being persistent and passionate is gonna beat natural talent every time.
Hello, welcome to the Pro Pilot Playbook. I'm Mike Martin.
And I'm Sean Ritchie.
Yeah, where we give you the tips, tricks, and hacks to become a pilot faster and cheaper. And we're holding up to our word here. We're trying to do this weekly. The response from our podcast has been wonderful. We love the encouragement and the comments and everything. And you guys are the reason we do this. And, the more that we do this, the easier that it's becoming. And the reason why is we're constantly receiving emails from you guys with great questions that give us topics for these podcasts. And we're also now, which we love, receiving interview requests from people now that we've started our interview segment. So if you have an interesting story regarding aviation and you feel like it would be very beneficial to young pilots and people thinking of coming on board, certainly drop us an email or comment or DM, and we'll try to get you scheduled to be on the podcast. We currently have, 3 or 4 good interviews in the queue that we're working for. So we have lots of good things. But today, we wanted to go through a couple emails that we've been receiving and comments, and we got a good one today. So I'll let Sean take that away.
Yeah, real quick on the interview thing. I mean, this is episode 66, which is awesome. I mean, I think it's amazing we've made it this far, but we made it this far because this thing is helping people. This is working, this little project we got going here. And the interviews we've been doing are from, episodes that were a hit. Like we had Jordan on, the whole skipping your CFI thing. One of the interviews Mike just referenced that we have hanging in the wings that we might do is a guy just like one of you guys or girls out there that bought their own airplane to do their flight training. And I think this gentleman even started his own flight school, went the extra step and did that. But we have a comment, speaking of the interview thing, and I know those episodes are longer. I don't know, some of you may like the longer episodes, some of you may not. I don't know. I like the whole episode that's just long enough for my car ride to work or the airport.
Yeah.
But anyway, Q Dog writes in. I wanted to read this one on the air because it coincides with what I just mentioned, that this thing is working and we're helping people. And
for sure.
I read this and man, it just gave me a lump in my throat. I love this. This just came in, a comment on the episode we just did where we interviewed the fighter pilot and Major Warner, that the F-16 pilot. And Q Dog says, going from graduate in 2019, not knowing what I wanted to do, then feeling even more lost because of COVID, and spiraling even more after my aunt passed away at 29. I leave off with this. I didn't catch the flying bug. Or I led off with this is what I think what he meant to say. I didn't catch the flying bug. It caught me. I never felt such a strong calling before ever in my life to do anything, ever. I'm glad to say that now I've got things figured out, met great people, and I'm driven by my obsession for aviation. I'm more happier than ever to embark on my journey at 22. My thanks go out to both of you guys for taking the time and effort to spread this knowledge, as well as interviewing great individuals and having them share their stories and knowledge. Thank God for letting me come across the world of aviation.
That's awesome, man. That's the first time I heard that. I actually missed that email. So, yeah, man, that guy. That's great. It's great. We appreciate the compliments and the comments. And we're meeting great people on the way. I forgot to tell you, Sean, Jamal texted me from the ATP interview, and he's got his he passed his instrument check ride with flying colors, so he's moved
That's
on to commercial. Yeah, yeah,
that's
and
great.
he
Congrats,
it,
Jamal. I'm hopefully you're watching this.
yeah.
That is fantastic news. Congrats.
Yeah, and we're going to keep in touch with him, and when he has a big update for us on, when he progresses in his career, we're certain we're going to check back in with him.
Yeah, I'm sure other people would agree with me on this. For me, the instrument rating is the hardest part of all this. And
Yeah,
once you're past that instrument rating, the rest of it's all downhill and fun. I mean,
yeah.
it's exciting stuff. It's
And the instrument's what we use every day.
Yep,
Still 25 years later, we're using skills from instrument flying. So yeah,
right.
that's how you
But
fly a jet.
right, but we're also flying it with a bunch of computer screens staring at us and autopilot, and we're more a manager of the situation. That instrument rating and that little single engine airplane without autopilot, your hand flying, and you got your, well, for us it was paper charts, and there's whatever,
Yeah, right,
it's a little more stressful than our day to day. But yeah,
for
you're
sure.
right. It's those are the skills you use in your day to day as a
Right.
professional pilot. All right, so back to what episode 66 is about here. Back to why we filmed this one, and this is a listener question from Jonathan. And he emailed us. And if you have a question for the podcast, you can email us at podcast@propilotplaybook.com. And the subject line is math in aviation.
Oh,
Well,
everybody loves math.
right. So here's John's question. Hello, I'm thinking of going to flight school at some point in the next couple of years, and I'm wondering what level of math I'm going to need to fly for the airlines. Back in high school, over 10 years ago, the highest level of math that I completed was Algebra 1, and I've heard that I might need trig or geometry. Is this true?
Great question. Yeah.
Yes.
You
Actually,
know
we haven't
what?
settled. Wait, real quick though, we haven't settled on a title for this episode. So anybody watching this right now, it's either one of two or three things. And my favorite was, "Am I too dumb to be a pilot?" How
I'm no
smart
good
do I
at
need to
trig.
be? Yeah,
I'm no good at trigonometry. Can I be a pilot?
something like that. Yeah, that's what this whole
I-
episode is about. How smart do you got to be a pilot? How much education do you need to be a pilot?
Right. And when we were talking before the show on which email to go over today, this one right away, I'm like, we got to do this one because the reason why is I've been asked this question so many times. I mean, before I was involved in the podcast, by people, and oh, they'll go, oh, what do you do for a living? They tell you, oh, you must be really good at math. They say that. Have you got that,
Right.
Sean, before?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No,
The other one you get
I'm not.
is yeah. The other one you get is the vision thing, and I think it comes from fighter pilots. I think the Air Force. Actually, we should have asked Aaron this, but previously you had to have 20/20 vision or something to
Sure.
be a fighter pilot. You'll get a reaction. Oh, I wanted to be a pilot also, but I wear glasses.
Right.
No, that's why you didn't do it.
Yeah. I know
Yeah,
lots and lots of guys that wear glasses and fly these jets every day.
yeah.
Actually, we
Absolutely.
have another episode on that. I think we go into detail about guys we've flown with who were probably pretty much blind, but out there flying a
Right.
jet. But
Oh man.
yeah. So there's no required. We'll just get basic bottom line, whatever. You're mistaken, John. Whoever told you that is incorrect. 100%
Right.
incorrect. And it just goes back to just general rule in life. Don't believe anything you hear and only half of what you see. Don't take other people's words for stuff. The naysayers are everywhere.
Right.
You don't need trig. The Algebra 1 is fine. And nobody's even going to look at that. And if you go through our episodes, you're also going to see you don't even need college anymore to be a professional pilot or to be an airline pilot.
Right.
even at
Right.
the majors. All that stuff is gone. Um, and the general intelligence of pilots, I don't know, this may be a bold statement, but I think it's the industry is, I shouldn't say that. The industry is lending itself
Where are you going with this?
to let people in that weren't as smart as they used to be. In by and
Right.
large, you don't have to be as smart as a human being used to be a pilot anymore. I mean,
Right, Sean, and I really, the way I answered this question 25 years ago is the same as today, but it's even easier. But basically, addition and subtraction is the only thing that we really use on a regular basis. You're adding fuel, subtracting fuel. You're calculating your fuel burn. Okay, the airplane burns this much an hour. It holds this many pounds. I mean, it's all basic math. And the other thing that was, the only like heavy math I guess we did 25 years ago was weight and balance, and you would actually write out and this is how many pounds the airplane weighs, and this is where the CG is, and all that was calculated by addition and subtraction. But now all of that is done. It's all plug and play on your iPad. The software is
right.
so sophisticated, it just does everything. I mean, literally, you touch each seat that has an occupant in it on your iPad, and it calculates everything: runway slope, the wind, the climb gradient, all your speeds, your takeoff safety speeds, your all of that is, and if it's raining, you just touch a thing on your iPad, it changes it. All that performance stuff is all done for you in seconds. So really, the addition and subtraction is even less. And then, yeah, the trigonometry, I guess you could call calculating a crossing restriction, which is when they say cross this fix, it's so many miles away and you're going so fast.
Right.
Maybe that is some lightweight trigonometry, but the plane figures all of that
Yeah,
out.
the computers do it for you now. Yeah.
Right. And there's gouges guys will teach you in your head anyway, even if you didn't have that. I mean, 25 years ago when we didn't have that, you could say I'm this many miles, and then mentally I divide it by
Right.
this much, and then that tells you how many times you're going to be there. But even back then, even the first jets I was flying, 25 or 30 years ago had small GPSs in it, and they could calculate your time to a fix. A GPS could always do that.
Sure.
So if you needed to, cross it, you could do the math based on how many times, in your head. And you always have a calculator with you. Everybody has one
In their
in their
pocket.
palm of their
Yeah.
hand. Right, right,
Yeah.
right. So, you can do any quick math that you need to, when you're calculating fuel load. You'll see guys, even, 6.7 pounds per gallon, and you're figuring all that on your phone, So,
Right.
and now we don't even, like on the Challenger, we don't even calculate when the fueler, on the old conventional jets, you needed they always pump gallons into your plane, but you always want pounds, right? You're like, well, I'm going to Palm Beach, it burns 7,000 pounds, so I need 9,000 pounds of fuel. So you would take your calculator out, and you would divide 9,000, subtract what you have on board, and then divide it by 6.7, because fuel weighs 6.7 pounds per gallon. And then you would say, hey, I need 375 gallons or whatever you need. Well, now in most of these advanced planes with single point refueling, you dial in what you want. You say, I need 7,000 total. So you put 7,000 pounds in there. They connect the truck, start pumping, and then when it gets to 7,000 pounds, it automatically shuts off.
That's a lot better on those big quantities, so you don't have to do any temperature conversion, because
Yeah,
ordering 7,000, 9,000 pounds in gallons in Costa Rica in the summertime is a lot different number of gallons than ordering that many gallons in wintertime in Cincinnati.
right.
When you start getting up into those 8, 9, 10,000 pounds of fuel, the
Totally.
you can be off a little bit with temperature. But yeah, the airplanes are getting easier to fly. The technology around our job is getting easier to fly. I mean, heck, the airliners back in the day used to have 3 guys up in the cockpit. Now
Right.
there's 3 or 5 computers that do the job of that third guy, so we don't need him in the cockpit
Right.
anymore. But I always thought, I've always taken that with a grain of salt anyway when they say something like, oh, you could do this job, you got to be good at math. Well, yes and no. Because if it's your day to day, the thing you do over and over and over every day, you're going to get good at that thing, whether you suck at math. You're just going to get good at it because it's what you got to do every day to do your job. And you're going to figure out little tricks and
Right.
hacks. And if you, all that education stuff for me, all that is like going to college and saying you have a degree in this, that's just a box that gets checked that tells somebody at one point in time you were smart enough to figure this particular thing out. So you're probably smart enough to figure out the particular thing I need to pay you to do. That's all that stuff is. And the flying thing is getting getting easier. They don't want us being bombarded and weighed down by doing some complex math in the cockpit. They would rather, and it makes sense, you want a computer in there that does that for you. That way you're able to sit back and, as the pilot, manage a situation of all these things happening instead of putting all your focus into, let's see, 6.7, I carry the one and then I move over. No, don't. Just the computer does it. Make sure the computer did it right, and you're able to divide your attention amongst everything instead of just focusing on one thing.
Right. Yeah. And I remember, in type rating school, when you learn to fly a specific jet, the feds would want you to do, even though the weight and balance can all be done on a computer now, they will want you to do one performance problem manually. And I think they're getting away from all of this.
Yeah.
But they would have these
are.
charts. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And to your point, it'll make sense in a minute. They would have these complex chase charts, they called it. And some of the viewers, I don't even know if you're not a pilot, if you've seen this, maybe if you're an engineer or something, but basically you bring it's a big grid and it has all these lines and crap on it. And you start on one side, you go to the temperature, then you go up here to your weight, then you go over here to the wind, and then you over here to, the runway slope, then over here, and then down here, and then the number of passengers in here, and then the temperature. And then at the end of the chart, once you finally go through all of that, you get a value at the end. And, it'll be 8,000 feet or whatever of runway. Well, you'd be sitting in class with 15 or 18 other pilots, and they'd be working through this program, and these guys are all smart. And then they'd say, okay, the instructor say, what'd you guys come up with? And then the guy in the front row would go, I got 7,200. And then somebody behind him would be like, I got 6,900. And somebody else would be like, I got 7,500. Nobody had the same answer. And then the instructor would go, oh, well, yeah. I mean, you guys
it's are 73-46 for those of you that knew what they were doing.
Right. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous, right? So now everybody, you do that exact same thing with an iPad, and everybody comes up with the exact same correct number. So to your point, getting the human mathematics and the mental math out of aviation makes it much safer. I mean, 100 times safer. And they know that.
Yeah. The last couple type ratings, well, I don't know which one it was, but yeah, it was check ride time or oral or whatever it was. And I asked him, I'm like, so we got to do a performance problem? He's like, yeah. You have your iPad? I'm like, I have my iPad. He's like, well, you got the app for the airplane, right? The I think it was the Cessna's whatever program for the. And I'm like, no, we don't have an account yet. He's like, that's all right. You can use mine. I mean, it wasn't even like get out a book or any kind of whatever. They want you to use the iPad. They want to see that you can.
They want you to.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Sean, the other thing is important to mention too, and it's on topic, but it's not math, is there used to be a huge amount of mental memorization. So,
absolutely.
And they're getting away from all of that for this exact reason that we're talking about. So you have a checklist when things go wrong. A light comes on, something's wrong. You look up in the checklist, it tells you what to do. But the FAA thought during certification of some of these airplanes, especially in the 80s, that if it's an immediate action item, it needs to be taken care of right away. And you as the captain don't have time to get the checklist out. So they would say, smoke in the cabin or whatever. And you would immediately have to memorize on your check ride these 5 steps, don oxygen mask, select 100%. There you go. There's the checklist.
I just grabbed a couple I had sitting here.
Right. So the red tabs on there were all emergency items, and you needed to memorize those things verbatim. I mean, verbatim.
Yeah, you got red
So
tabs, yellow tabs, and then there's some other orange tab, whatever. No, white tabs
right,
usually. But yeah, the red ones were all memorized. Now they've realized
yeah,
this is we're these guys don't need to memorize this stuff.
right. And for the viewers, that is not a hard. It's not hard.
Right.
Anybody watching this can memorize all that shit. It just takes forever. I mean, we have
Yeah.
these note cards, and then it would say "smoke in the cockpit," and then you would say to yourself, "Okay, I'm going to do this, and this." Then you flip it over and check yourself. And
Mhm.
to be honest with you, you would forget a lot of that stuff, and then you would have to relearn it again every 6 months when you go back to training. So the FAA is kind of like, you know what? In the
I
heat
got
of
those
somebody got
too.
practical.
We
There
got
you go.
these little note cards.
Yeah,
So yeah,
they started making them for
yeah.
you. Yeah,
Environmental system, smoke, fire, or odor, and then you'd sit there and try to rattle off all the items. And on the back of the card, it tells you what you would do.
yes,
Cockpit
yeah. And
mask
those are the
on.
professional. Those are professional
Yeah,
note cards.
they made these.
Back in the
Yeah,
day, we would make our own. You'd buy them
sure,
at
right,
Walgreens.
right,
So, then they realize, well, having these pilots. So if people are having difficulty reciting all that shit when they're sitting in an office doing a check ride, how about after you've been to training for you haven't been to training for 5 months, and then you have a serious, scary emergency, where you're seeing fumes in the cockpit or whatever. You're not thinking clearly anyway because you're under pressure. Then you miss 3 or 4 of those, on a list, and then you screw
right,
up. They're like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So now they're saying, well, have the emergency item checklist within arm's reach in a clear format in the cockpit. So if there is an emergency, you can quickly reach it. And then the newer airplanes, the really nice ones like the G500 and all that stuff, the plane identifies the emergency that's occurring, and then it has the items, right
right.
on the screen. It just pops up for you. Is any of your stuff doing that? Is it showing
We have
emergency items?
we have electronic checklists in the airplanes, at some of the
Uh-huh.
airplanes, but nothing pops up automatic like that. Um,
Gotcha.
but
Yeah, I don't have that either. And the problem is there's a lot of revisions to that crap too. Like the
yeah,
lawyers, somebody, catches on fire and then they sue the manufacturer because they skipped a step. So they're constantly,
yeah,
updating those checklists for all that. But I guess we digressed a little on this, but it is a great topic because I don't want people watching this of average intelligence to say, well, and that's why, if you rewatch the F-16 fighter jet interview that we did, which is it's very long, but it's very informative, and I encourage everybody to
yeah.
watch it.
Major
But
Warner
that
says, yeah, yeah. He does
I
not
asked him
consider.
this question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You did. We talked about it in length actually about, and he was saying he doesn't consider himself a smart individual. He failed his some portion of the test once and had to retake it, and then even then his scores weren't great, and
Right,
yeah,
right,
and I've never considered myself a smart person either. I mean, I
yeah,
educate myself and I dive into things I'm interested in. So
right.
if you want to talk about hot tubs or something, I'm pretty knowledgeable in hot tubs because I've had to work on
Right,
one enough now. But
right. Yeah, yeah.
but I don't consider myself smart. And
You
so
get good at working on things, Sean, when you're cheap and you have no money. That's when you.
yes, you do. Yeah, what's that country song? If it's broke around here, we can fix it.
That's right. That's right. Oh
Uh,
man, no,
but yeah,
I feel the same way.
yeah. If you're somebody who's you think you're not capable of doing it because of your intelligence level, man, that's a bad way of thinking. And something else um, that I just thought of, John, it is John, right? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
John. You said something about starting training in the next couple years. No, no. Drive out to the airport now.
right,
Don't
right.
wait. Why you waiting?
Yeah, it's more about persistence than it is about knowledge. And honestly, in that fighter video, he says that he was showing up at the airport. And he really wanted it,
Yeah.
and they can see that, and that's what got him through. I mean, there's an old saying. 90% of being successful is showing up, man, and that really is it, you know.
Yep.
And my the famous Gary Vaynerchuk, he's a famous YouTuber. You know, he always says, you know, ideas are shit, and implementation is key.
Yep.
And what he means by that is you could sit here and analyze, oh, which flight school am I going to go to, and what's should I relocate, and this and that, and what kind of planes do they have, and am I going to should I do an accelerated program, or should I do a short one, or you know, all, and you could sit there and just analyze this stuff and never take action,
Right.
and you're never going to be a pilot. You know, you're better off just starting somewhere and, you know, seeing what happens. You know?
You can do anything you want. Being persistent and passionate is going to beat natural talent every time.
Every time. Every time. Yep.
And you, by the way, one last thing on that, as we're driving a whole nother subject into the ground here. John, if you're saying in the next couple of years, because it's something to do with finances or something like that, go watch the interview with Jamal, the gentleman we just mentioned in the very beginning of this video, about going to ATP and their financing options and how you can basically go start your flight training with zero doll hairs in your pocket.
Yep. I just had a personal friend call me, and then they put me in touch with a guy that's wanting to get into aviation. This just yesterday, and I took a call with him, and yeah, I after we got off the phone call, I sent him that link, and I said, you know, this is hard to beat right here. When he was talking about those signing bonuses and the stipend when you're from Frontier, when you're a flight instructor, and, you know, the finance, it's just, to me, it's a no brainer. I wish that stuff was around when I did it, you know?
Right. But no, there are plenty of dummies, just like when you're out trying to drive to the grocery store, you know, there's always a dummy driving slow in the left lane. You know, there's plenty of dummies in the aviation world too that are pilots. I've flown with some, you know. A perfect example. Here's somebody I've I gotta be careful here because they may watch this. I don't know if I should tell this story, but I was shutting the cabin door on an airplane one time. You know, it's one of those big air stair folding whatever. And when this was a Hawker 800, and it has this handle on it. After the door's shut, it has this really tight spring. When it gets close to that door, it wants to jerk right out of your hand and slap into the door. I mean, it's violent. And if your hand was in there when that handle closed, I mean, God, I wouldn't even want to think about how it'd be like shutting your hand in a car door.
Right.
And the thing is, though, it would be very easy to do because you're gripping it and whatever. And as it takes off, you know, if you don't open your hand up and let it go, it could take your hand with it. So I'm teaching one of the kids with me on the Hawker. What I call him a kid, one of the young co-pilots. I'm teaching him this door. And I'm giving him all the warnings and my technique for doing it. So I make sure I don't get my hand caught in there. And he's like, yeah, I've already done that. I'm like, you've already done what? Somebody already showed you the door? He's like, no, I shut my hand in it. It got my hand. I'm like, oh my God, did it break your finger? And he's like, no, not the first time, but the second time I thought it did. I'm like, oh, you've done it more than once.
That's great.
So there are dummies flying airplanes, folks.
I had an old chief pilot, and he managed a lot of pilots, and he would always say, he'd say something, he'd tell a story like that about somebody doing something dumb, and he's like, Mike, you got to remember, there's no pilot is completely useless. They can always serve as a bad example.
Yes. Now,
man.
I may have to go cut that story out of there because, oh man, the kid
you don't want that person watching. But yeah, hopefully you guys found some encouragement in this episode, and yeah, keep tuning in and check out our course. It's online now. We've got a different product now that we're offering with independent coaching that's had a great response. That just started last week, but yeah, check out ProPilotPlaybook.com, and we look forward to having a few more guests on here.
This is brand new. I don't know how long it's going to last, but Yeah, as of right now, there's one of the propotplaybook.com. One of the things we're selling is weekly. You can get on live with us kind of in a Zoom format, and you can ask us your explicit questions, that deal with your exact situation, and we'll sit there and we'll tell you what we think. One-on-one conversation. It's in a group setting. I would say one-on-one, but it's everybody else can benefit from the answer too. But yeah. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you got a question for us, podcast@propotplaybook.com, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.